everyone, and welcome to this week's That's Mental, Mate. I'm joined this week by Tom Forbes. How are you?
Hi there, I'm good. How are you?
Very good. So we would start the podcast every week asking our guests just how they're feeling, how life is, that kind of thing.
Mm. So yeah, my life's been not too bad lately. Just sort of finding my feet with sort of my mental health, but getting there slowly, gradually. I think the Christmas period has come and also sort of highlights a lot of my issues as well. Let's be honest. But other than that, I'm doing okay.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll probably get into that at some point. So I understand you're studying to be a psychotherapist.
That's correct. Yeah, I've been in the system quite a long time with my own mental health, and I noticed that for myself, I wanted to do something to help others. I find that area of sort of therapy very interesting, and it's something that I wanted to pursue for quite some time now. And I finally found myself on the path of being able to fulfill that. And it's just been something that I've really been enjoying doing now. I've been doing it for a couple of years, and yeah, it's just been really good. And hopefully, not too far away now in the future, that I'll be able to help people with their problems.
And what attracted you, if you don't mind me asking?
I see a lack of help in society, and a lack of. I feel that a lot of therapists. This is no sort of way to slag therapy off, but a lot of therapists, some of them don't actually have lived experience of mental health issues. They've read it from a book or studied it, and it's great that we've got these people to help us. But I feel that sometimes people that have had this experience of themselves, whether it be anxiety, depression, bipolar, autism, any kind of conditions, I feel that if they've had lived experience, they know what goes into these conditions. And I feel that they may be able to look inside a person's issue more than a person that hasn't experienced it. So that really did kind of inspire me with the issues that I've had to want to help people with the same issues that I've had.
Very good. And is there a certain field that you want to focus on, or a certain field that you'd want to go into eventually?
Yeah, there's two areas that I'd really like to specialize in. One of them is anxiety. Again, because I've got a lot of lived experience with different kinds of anxiety. And also I'd like to help maybe children on the autistic spectrum, because I am autistic myself. And I know the challenges that come with being young and having autism, and that scary space it is at the moment, when you're going through it and you're not aware of why you feel the way you are, and trying to bring clarity for them, and helping with them issues really.
That's really good that there's more people out there getting involved, because like you said, there is a bit of a lack of funding, and I suppose with your personal life you can bring that in as well, and you could maybe empathize more with your patients or clients.
Absolutely. I feel like, understanding is a massive key to unlocking potential with a client, as you say, because you've got that understanding of what they're going through. You've lived it, so you know what it's exactly like. Whereas sometimes outsiders might look in and think, why is that person acting like that? But for me, knowing they're acting like that is because it's like might be something that's triggered them, or something they might be really anxious about, but it might not be picked up as anxiety to the outside world because they're showing it in a different way. So I feel that that understanding and that knowledge of what someone's going through, may help me on my journey with helping others, because I've got that lived experience. So it's something I feel strongly about.
And if you don't mind me asking, maybe go into a bit of, we've talked a bit about your professional life. Do you mind me
Mhm.
maybe talking a bit about your personal life? So when you said that you suffered with anxiety, could I ask,
Yeah.
when you noticed that creeping in, was there like a trigger or?
I think this is where it kind of links up with my autism. It was kind of secondary school, start of secondary school, and growing up in them years of going into puberty as well. You find that the autism starts bringing the anxiety out more. The high pressure of like trying to fit into a normal school, knowing you're not exactly in a neurotypical world, you're not feeling normal, and you kind of feel like you're sticking out like a sore thumb. I kind of started getting struggles and started putting pressure on myself, to try and fit in, and with that became more anxiety, more stress. I started just going into a spiral of depression as well because I didn't want to go to school and I was struggling with it. And, I did eventually get some help with that, with the support of my parents who have been just so amazing throughout my whole life. And they fought to try and get me help or put into a school that would be beneficial for me, not mainstream, because it was just too intense. The high level of work, the homework, the constant lesson planning, and that it became so overwhelming, and it did really mess up with my anxiety. And that's where I believe personally my anxiety started, and I think that's what it sort of spiraled on from then. And it proved to me that this is going on because of this. Even though I was anxious, I still had time to recognize that this anxiety was coming from this. But that's when it was kind of like, ouch, this anxiety is moving on now. It's going to places about other things. It was going out. It was going nice places. If mum and dad took me for a day trip out, I'd be anxious. It was it moved on from that small area of just going to school to my personal life and my outside life, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I had a episode a few weeks ago with a guest called Stephen Edger, and he was waiting for an autism diagnosis, and he actually reached out to me there recently to say that it came back that he did have autism, and he talked a lot about how anxious he would be, especially growing up talking to people, and he's since become an author, and he goes on to meet these people like fellow authors at events, and he's constantly anxious. He says he's anxious to talk to the new people. He's anxious about ticket prices. He's anxious about car parking. He's anxious about where everyone congregates. Like just a little bit of everything goes through his mind. Would you say that you would struggle with that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, to Stephen, if you're listening, it's just so good that you managed to get a diagnosis, and it gives you an identity of who you are and the reason you are the way you are. And it sometimes, for me, just off the beaten track a little bit, for me, I didn't really discover my autism, understand myself till recently this year. It took me such a long time to process and understand. I got a diagnosis when about 7 or 8, and I'm 24 now. So, it's quite a long time of trying to understand and grow up through this issue. But going back to what you said, there are things, I know my limitations. Some things do provoke my anxiety more than others. I think one of the things that kind of not bugs me, but it kind of just, like, wow, okay, is people, when you talk to them, they go, oh, I didn't know you was autistic. You don't look autistic. I think that's one of the big stigmas around autism is you don't act like a person that's non-verbal. So it automatically makes, are you sure you're autistic? And you're not just like got something else wrong with you. That's one thing I've come across quite a few times now. But yeah, absolutely. Anxiety seems to be coded into autism, I'd say. For a lot of people, I've definitely noticed that that's had an impact on my life. And I think overthinking as well definitely ties into that as well. Overthinking about just the small little things that neurotypical people might not worry about. I find that also entwines with autism.
Yeah, I did a bit of research before I spoke to Stephen, and it's kind of like a stigma that it is a mental health problem to be autistic, which it isn't. It's like an old wives' tale, but that's how people kind of see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of had a wee research, and apparently, if you are autistic, it's very common for you to have such issues such as depression and anxiety, but because of your autism.
Absolutely. It's like I said, I feel like it's hardwired into the neurological condition that I've got. I do think it does. It definitely is. But I feel like you said, doing some research, that there are a lot of misconceptions about autism. And I think it's hard because when people get diagnosis, there's such a big variety of types of autism. The spectrum, that's why it is a spectrum. It's huge. There's some people that will go near enough their whole adult life without knowing, and then one day they get a diagnosis and like, wow, I never knew I had that. But then it kind of explains their whole life to them. Some people have kids that get checked out for it and they have it from a young age. So it is very much it's such a vast umbrella. I think that it's just such a big area. It's just hard to find like that sweet spot, as it were, of trying to find out, right, that's that everyone's the same. Everyone with autism's got that same characteristic. It's impossible to find. Everybody with autism is very different. Like for me, I'm a very social person, whereas somebody my age might not be a social person, but also might have the same IQ as me. So it is kind of, it's everybody with it is unique and different. And for many years, I saw it as an issue and this big stigma to myself. I was like, oh, you're just a stupid guy with autism, and you're going to be this silly guy. You're never going to do anything with your life. People are going to think you're weird because you're into certain hobbies, and they're not stuff that people like most people like. Or I found myself very much. I isolated myself from the world because I kind of felt, well, I'm stupid, I'm pointless, I'm worthless, and I think that's why depression comes in as well. With you notice the depression with the anxieties, because it kind of links up, because you're so self-doubting because you've got this condition you think is going to stop you, and it has its downsides. And I think that's why it kind of my depression started as well, of the self-negativity against myself a lot of the time.
And it's strange that you said that. And for the I'm a Celebrity winner this year, Sam Thompson, and he was very open about his autism and about his ADHD. Do you think having people like that in the spotlight and having role models like that has helped you?
Absolutely, because when you've got somebody that's got a massive social media following and has, the generation of people that are watching that, the younger generation, especially, a lot of kids watch this, or younger adults watch this, and he's telling them about his experience or his struggles and open up about it, they'll be like, oh, I know a friend with that, or I might have that, or they have that, and they feel like, okay, so he's doing all right for himself. He's just one I'm a celebrity, So who's stopping me from becoming, famous one day, or doing something really good in my life? It doesn't stop famous people. They carry on. It does raise awareness, is what I'm trying to come at. It does definitely spreads awareness. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but there's a guy in the Navy who spoke to the Autistic Society, who's really, really high up in the Navy, and he got a diagnosis of autism, and he spoke about it. And he's like a really high ranked officer in the Navy, and I just people like that are very inspiring. These people that hold down high pressure jobs in big companies or big establishments, and you just realize that you can achieve. It's not an issue. This shouldn't be something that stops you from achieving as a neurotypical person would. It's just you have to fight harder for things sometimes. You have to try and make sense of a world that sometimes can be quite scary and quite intense and overwhelming. So, when you do get into something, especially if it's a hobby, you'll put 110% into it. And that person will be just so hardworking and focused and career driven for that, because that's their hobby. They love it. Once you're passionate about something, when you're autistic and you're passionate about something, you do focus on that. And if you can get into that with your passion, there is no stopping someone with that. They will just give everything. And yeah, I think, going back to the point of, raising awareness, it's so important to break these stigmas, because it is a disability, but I also see it as an ability. It gives me ability to see things that some people might not see. Like I've been told by my friends and family, I do see outside the box a lot of the time, and I create from things that not necessarily others might have seen, or give perspectives. And I'm very good at describing things, and people go, wow, I didn't think of it like that. So I personally now accept that I have it, and I'm happy to have it, and accept that I've got it, and will continue to understand the world in my own little way, but also keep perception of reality, of course.
It's just like your only super player.
I would say it is it's cliche, but yeah, I do see it as an ability that does help me in situations, and it's got me. It will get me places. I know that with that, if I'm looking when I get into psychotherapy, that someone might think, oh, actually, let's go with someone on the neurodivergence, and take that person on board. And I could be one of their hardest workers and give them everything. And, I do feel that experience does somewhat give you credibility to get you into places. You know what I mean? So I do feel that it does help in areas of being able to get, you know, in the right places with the right people and the right support. I think support is a very important thing. Working for people, working with people that understand that one day you might be the most social person and the next day you might be the most, without being horrible, ignorant person. You might not want to talk, you might blank them. That's nothing personal. It might just be you're having a bad day yourself. But just for awareness and people to know stuff and how you react to things, it really does help. It's so beneficial because understanding and, you know, awareness is a main key. And I feel that the world is adapting slowly to neurodivergent people. Not fast enough, granted, but it is getting there eventually. I know it will do.
And can we go back and talk a bit about your anxiety? So you said that you feel like it started and correlated, went hand in hand with your autism. When would you
Mhm.
experience it now? You say you're very sociable. Would you notice it if you were brought into a group of people you didn't know, or is it more like worries about jobs or anything like that? I suppose there's a whole different realm of things that you could be anxious about. But is there anything in particular, or anything you see that definitely influences it?
Oh, absolutely. Like for me, one of my hardest battles since sort of, I say I've had two massive hurdles in my life. The first was understanding autism and getting through sort of the puberty side and getting out of the what I call my really bad side of autism that was, you know, brought a lot of bad times. After that, I had a break of about 2 years where it was quite, my life had plateaued. It was quite normal. I hate the word, but normal. It was kind of average. And then one day I just started getting these anxiety thoughts. And then I started to realize that I was suffering from a new form of anxiety, of health anxiety, which has been my second biggest challenge in my life, I'd say. Since about 2015, I've started to really suffer with worrying about my health, you know, worrying about every condition under the sun. And again, that correlates with the autism of knowing too much. When you're autistic, you like to research things and you like to find things out. The worst thing we know we can do is go on Google and start Googling things. And when you're autistic, you've got a mind like a sponge. I remember all sort of symptoms to conditions I'd look up. I'd, you know, Google why do I feel like I'm feeling? You know, Google symptoms. And it would always be catastrophic things. You know, it'd be like your brain aneurysms, your heart attacks, your cancers, your strokes. And then it became so bad that I started to fear living. Like I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to stay indoors all the time because if I go out, I might die. You know, I might have a heart attack or, you know, I have really bad anxiety. And from that, it started in around about 2015, mildly, and it got really bad when COVID lockdowns happened. And it stopped it. That also created more panic about getting COVID as well. That was another big fear because obviously there's this virus we don't know about and people are dying from it and getting really sick. So kind of that panicked me as well. But it, I was going out and I was enjoying my life a bit, you know, not a major going out because I don't really have a massive circle of friends, but I was going out enjoying myself and, you know, doing bits and pieces that made me feel like I was in society and having a good enough life that I was happy with. Then obviously lockdown happened, and that, I think that really sort of put the nail in the coffin for my anxiety. That's what, because I was, you know, I always believe, my self belief is momentum is important with my mental health. If I'm going out regularly and keep doing it and it becomes natural and I'm doing that, that's when I'm sort of comfortable. You know, I'm keeping going, I'm finding everything okay, I'm stable is the word I'm looking for. I feel very stable with the anxiety because I've got like control. I think an important thing for me was control of my anxiety, and by doing things repeated daily, you know, that's what really kind of helped. So when obviously lockdown happened, staying in, you can't go out. That's what really messed up my routine, my anxiety, and it just skyrocketed from there. And I'll be honest, when lockdown sort of was over and we could sort of go back out, I almost felt like, whoa, nah, this world's too scary for me now. My anxiety would never be able to cope. I can't go back to doing the normal, you know, anymore. It's not normal anymore. And yeah, it totally changed my life after that. And I've struggled and I've had to seek therapy for my health anxiety after lockdown because it was just unbearable. And even to this day, like even sitting here now, I still struggle with it quite a bit. But I'm on the road. I'm trying to get the help. I've got the help. And it does help. What as I'm saying is like therapy does help, and I feel that that sort of touches a new subject of that, but it is trying to make sense of why I feel the way I feel with my anxiety, if you know what I mean.
Do you feel like you had a bit of agoraphobia?
Definitely created from the pandemic. Definitely, it created the health anxiety. Created that. I'd say that definitely that kind of did double up with that, and that really did sort of set me off more because I was like, it was almost like everybody was at home, so everybody was in my boat. That's how I felt with my anxiety. Everyone was in my boat. They all knew how I felt because I was like, I can't go out, I can't enjoy life, and that's like, you know, how it feels for me. Like that's how it feels for me. And people are living my life now. Like everybody in the UK or wherever the lockdowns were around Europe, around the world, everybody's living what it feels like to be socially isolated, a socially isolated person. So that really did. It kind of made me feel like actually people might understand more now what it's like to feel this way, to feel locked up and but be restricted of it. I know this was through government implementation of stopping people from doing things, but it was almost like this is what mental health feels like to people that can't go out. This is restricting people daily, even before lockdown. Mental health does this to people in their heads. And yeah, 100% agree with you when I say the agoraphobia I definitely feel did come from the health anxiety and the lockdowns. It all them three just create this massive circle. And I struggled to get back out there. And then there come a time where I got back out there, but I wouldn't go out without a mask. Like I was paranoid of catching COVID. And it just carried on. And, it took me a long time to go back out in the world without a mask on because, just the fear of catching COVID with health anxiety was just overwhelming. And then it created another massive challenge for me as well, was when the vaccine came out. That is like the most scariest thing ever because I'm no anti-vax. So, when I was a baby, I'd had all my inoculations, I've had flu jabs and stuff. But I was so fearful of taking the COVID vaccine because I saw on news articles, like reputable sources, about how young males were getting heart conditions and problems from vaccines, the COVID vaccine. And, I was panicking about having heart attacks, and then there's something they're going to put in me that could potentially give me a heart attack or give me heart problems. So it was very hard to try and weigh up, this vaccine to keep me safe from a disease that we don't know about, but then also something that might create damage. So it was kind of, that also created more anxiety because I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And it really did. It kind of stressed me out and created more anxiety. So even when it was like being at home, anxious about staying in because, my life's kind of turned upside down like a lot of people were, there was also this anxiety of how do I get back out in the real world after this is over. And that created such a big issue for me.
And do you feel like with the health anxiety, where do you think the likes of hypochondria, when do you think it went past hypochondria? Like where do you think the line was?
For me, it was just an obsession. It filled a gap of my life was okay, so it filled a gap of something that I didn't really think about, but I bought into. So one day I had a headache, I think it was, and I was like, oh, I've got a headache. But then stupidly, I was like, oh, I've got nothing to do. I'll just Google what caused the headache. I was just curious. Like being autistic, you're always curious and you want to know things. So I was like, why do we have headaches? And then one thing was like, oh, it was like brain aneurysms can kill you. And I clicked it and I read about it because I was like, what can kill you? So I had a look at it. And I think from then on, that's what was a trigger. I looked for something because I was curious, stumbled upon something different, and it triggered me. And it made me like, whoa, actually, there's, I need to be cautious about my health now. And that's what really kind of opened up. I was like, no way, there's stuff out there that can harm me even worse. I was aware of health conditions, but it was more like, right, I need to Google more about what other things can kill me. And I was like Googling like things that could really make me ill. And I was like, Jesus, I'm panicking now. I've got myself into a right panic. I was like, there's so many threats out there. Like, why have I not known this before? And I kind of, did that. That's when it started spiraling to past hypochondria. It was like the constant body checking. Oh, is there any lumps or bumps? Or, seeking assurance from my mum and my dad, like, oh, do I look pale? Or have you seen this on my neck before? Is that lump new or something like that? And, constant doctor's visits. And it doesn't help when sometimes GPs are not necessarily helpful and they just see you as that hypochondria case and not really understanding. I think that's the issue we've got as well in society is a lot of mental health conditions. You are just, it's terrible. It should not be this way, but I do feel like you're just treated as a crazy person and it's disgusting. I think we need to break these barriers of mental health being just as important as physical health. And that's why I kind of find health anxiety kind of ironic. It's a mental health condition about physical health. It's such a confusing type of anxiety. One that still baffles me. I'm trying like, why am I worried about what I'm worried about? And I try and put pictures together in my head because obviously being on the spectrum, you're kind of looking at you like, right, okay, wow, it's so overwhelming. You can get yourself in such a spiral, which I have done many times to the point where I'm having a full-blown panic attack, to the extent that I've got symptoms that I'm like I'm having a stroke. I lose my vision, which I've researched and found out more about is an optical migraine. So your eyes will go fuzzy. I lose sensation in my hands and my arms. I feel very dizzy, very nauseous, and very numb. I get all tingling in my side of my face. So they're stroke-like symptoms. So they're very scary. When I have these full-blown panic attacks, and having health anxiety, my first thing is stroke or mini stroke. And, that doesn't help. That makes the anxiety worse. It takes you longer to come out of this cycle of anxiety. And that's what I've had to try and work out what's anxiety, what's health problem, that's the thing. With anxiety, general anxiety, people will get symptoms and you're kind of like, wow, okay. So I sit there and think, right, is this anxiety symptoms or is this a doctor's problem symptom, So yeah, it's tricky to say the least.
And when did you feel like you were able to go out more and feel like the anxiety wasn't as bad, or do you feel like you're still kind of going through that?
I would call it my rebuild stage at the moment. Last year I set myself a goal. I said I've got to go out every single day of the year. And I made that possible. I was like, right, there's no day I'm staying in, even if I have bad anxiety day. And what I'll do is I drive. So I'll go in the car, and even if it's drive around the block, literally a drive around the block, or a walk around the block, in the day, it's get out. And when you do that, it's kind of cements, okay, I'm doing it, building up little by little. I'll be honest, and this is open, I had to rebuild my life from scratch since the pandemic and my anxiety. It got really bad, really low. With that comes the depression and the bad thoughts. But it was building up day by day, little by little, and I'm still doing that. There's some days where I struggle with it. I'm like, right, okay, go back to the original plan. Just go around the block today. Be kind to yourself. And then there's some days that I can, go a little bit further and go out for the day or whatever. But it's just building resilience, I think, and keeping the momentum going and being kind to yourself and understanding, right, there's an issue. We know there's an issue, but we've been through this before, and just keep cementing that in your head that it is okay to fall back. But don't fall back all the way back to the beginning. Put little like blocks in the way so that if you do start feel like you're failing, you've got these blocks and these little stops that will stop you going all the way back to the bottom, because then you've got to rebuild yourself. And that's what I do, regularly. I check in with myself. I say, right, where am I? Where do I feel like I'm failing? Where do I feel like I'm succeeding? And I'm my worst critic. I'll be open and honest, but I am my worst critic. I'm very harsh on myself. People have said to me, you should be proud of yourself for what you've done. And I'll just laugh off and go, no, I want more. And I think with me, I'm a person that wants to go straight in and do things straight away. So it's been hard to try and build slowly. And yeah, it's relearning behaviors of how to cope in the real world again. And yeah, I got help for my health anxiety in the form of a therapist who was probably the most amazing therapist that I've met yet on my journey. He had ASD as well, so he got it. He's like, this is amazing. Like this work we did together. He put it in a way that an autistic person will understand rather than a neurotypical person. So it really did help. And yeah, it's just been a roller coaster of emotion and a journey. But I'm still not there yet. And I think that's also kind of the beautiful side of it is, I can sit here with a certain degree of knowledge and talk about it, but no, I've not finished my journey yet. I'm still on my journey. And I hope that people that listen to this will be like, you know what, I can do that too. Like I can still live some form of fulfillment in my life, but also know that it's okay to continue these struggles, but still carry on with your life. And that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to rebuild my life. That's the thing, because, with the anxiety, the depression, and the autism, it does create a lot of borders up in your life. Got a lot of defenses. It stops you from experiencing a lot of things, and it causes a lot of isolation as well.
And can you give examples of what your therapist has said to help you in case there's people listening to this that might be going through similar issues as you've
Yeah, so
raised?
it was, first of all, it's just realizing, like, going back. I think the first thing to do for me was I was going back. What was my root cause? What triggers? What sort of things trigger me? Like I couldn't watch medical programs, or my parents like medical documentaries. To watch them, I'd have to like leave the room. I couldn't watch them; it'd trigger my anxiety, or they'd turn it off for me. So it was kind of like going back to find your triggers. Why are you triggered by this? Like, was there like a family episode in the past where you saw a relative that was ill, and was that a trigger? Like, did you, because you've seen them ill, someone you loved ill, it's not the most amazing thing to see. And was that a trigger point? So we'd go through triggers, the past. Then we sort of, it's almost called brain hijacking. When we realize the cycle we're on. So for me, see the trigger, could be a medical program. I know that I need to get away from the trigger and I need to hijack my brain. So in that way, I need to think about something else or do something else instant, snap out of that as quick as I can, because the less, I think it's about 3 or 4 seconds the brain can change its, course. I think it's around about that time. So you can change your thought in that quickly. If you can change that thought as quickly as you can, you've got a higher chance of not going into full-blown anxiety. So it was trying to work out how to hijack these thoughts and, continue. Then the third part for me was doing things. The trigger of living, basically. One of my triggers is going out. So it was working for a trigger. And I think the most important thing I stress, and I talk to friends and family, I say the same thing, is try and be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because as soon as you start becoming comfortable in that environment that you don't feel comfortable, you'll start becoming comfortable to the degree that the next bit of uncomfortableness will be so much more above what you're used to. You'll be like, wow, before I struggled to, like, for example, go to the shop. Now I'm going to a shop that's 10 miles away, for example, on a drive out, so it's becoming more comfortable in the uncomfortable zone. And it becomes more of a normality. And that's what's happened for me. I found myself in positions that before I'd have been like, no, I can't do this. And I'd have freaked out and had to go home. But now I'm like, I'm comfortable, but I'm anxious, but I've got this. I'm managing this. I'm not letting this control me. And I'm thinking about other things constantly while I'm doing this. So I'm not focusing on, oh, I might have a cardiac arrest here, or I might pass out and end up in hospital. I'm thinking, right, this is okay. I'm going to go and grab a drink from the bar, or I'm going to grab some food. I'm just going to enjoy myself where I'm at. I'm enjoying the company I've got. Just continue thinking about what you've got in that moment rather than what could be, because the brain is so powerful at, putting misconceptions in our heads just so quickly. And that's why I try and hijack the brain thoughts as quickly as I can, because I know that that's my highest success rate of stopping it in its tracks.
Quickly before you go, can I just ask you, we ask everyone at the end of the podcast, what advice they would give that makes them feel better? Something you do?
My advice is just, surround yourself with people that are like-minded as you. Don't be afraid to be different. Um, you know, Society is very cold and very hush hush about mental health, but everyone struggles with different things. And there is always help. I know there's people that feel suicidal and stuff. There is always other options, and doing stuff and following through with suicide and stuff like that is always seek help. And you're never alone, because loneliness is a huge thing, but it's you're never alone, and always get help. And there's people out there that really do care about you, that you might least expect it to be them, but they do care. But yeah, no, I just say, just live every day as if it's your last and enjoy it, because life's one big journey. And I think we all need to just appreciate the small things in life that we have, and the big things follow.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thanks for coming on as well.
Thank you. It's been brilliant.
Anyone negatively affected by this week's episode, there are a number of links in the bio to help. That's all from me. I will see you next week on That's Mental Mate.